Welcome to the Daily Huddle Spiritual Matters Thursdays. I'm your host, Dr. Monikah Ogando. Today we are talking about how do you express anger and pain. And this is the episode that you want to listen to before you punch anybody on the throat. I'm trying to save you from a misdemeanor charge. Okay, let's get to it. So, there's this. I want you to read a book called Attachment Theory by Thais Gibson, Thais, last name Gibson, Gibson. And the attachment theory supposes that we as human beings have a particular way that we react when our emotional well-being feels threatened. Okay, feels threatened. Not that it is threatened, okay, but feels threatened. Some of us are anxious avoidant, and we just kind of like, oh my God, what's going on? And you call more, you double text, and you, begin to doubt yourself and begin to run scenarios in your head. You become anxious. Then there are those of us who are fearful avoidant, and those are the folks who assume the worst, chaos and catastrophizing and so forth. Then there are those of us who are dismissive avoidant. And those are the folks that are like, I don't care, that's fine. Whatever, do whatever you want. And they just are dismissive that way because they're trying to mask their hurt and pain. And then there are those that are disorganized avoidant, which is a combination of all of those other three. They're the most fun ones because you never know what you're gonna get. Just a melee of anxious, fearful, and dismissive. And then you have secure attachment. And the secure attachment folks, are pretty self-regulated and secure within themselves. And they're like, okay, this is going on. And they have no problem expressing, however vulnerably, whatever hurt or pain or anger, dissatisfaction, frustration they may be feeling. And they can advocate for themselves. I need to take a break, or, we need to pause this conversation or whatever. Even if they resort to childish behavior, like calling people names in the heat of the moment, they can take accountability for things like that and correct their behavior. Okay, that's secure attachment. So I want to talk to you about how you express that anger or that pain, or when you feel like your emotional well-being is being attacked or in some way threatened. Because if you can identify yourself as a fearful avoidant or dismissive avoidant or anxious avoidant or disorganized attachment, which is a combination of all of those three, or secure attachment, then you can better identify the mechanisms that somebody else uses, whether it's in your primary relationship with a spouse, a girlfriend, boyfriend, lover, friend, we don't judge, or your children, or even inside of your work scenario, colleagues, direct reports, supervisors, etc. If you understand how somebody responds to anger or pain, listen to me. I'm close. If you understand how somebody reacts, how somebody changes their behavior or changes their demeanor or whatever, based on how they respond to anger or pain, you can literally create world peace. You just have to multiply that times 8 billion people. Okay? Volume. It's a volume play. Because when you can be with someone, when they are feeling the most unloved or unlovable, then you create an anchor blueprint in their heart, in their mind, in their relationship dynamic with you, that you are safe. And the thing that creates longevity, trust, intimacy, connection, and ultimately grace in relationships, in human relationships, is safety. More than, sometimes we say love, and we attach like the butterflies in the stomach and, the gooey feelings and likability to love. Like if I like someone, it's easier to love them, etc. But love isn't a feeling in that way. Love is more like a decision. And creating safety is a skill. We think that sometimes because when you become a parent, for example, that you know how to create safety for your children because you know, put the covers on the electrical outlets, or because you make sure that you read the ingredients in the food so that you're not causing any harm, et cetera, et cetera. But creating safety is far more proactive than that. And when you learn how to do that with yourself, for yourself, and you then become willing to do that with and for other people, and you are a safety net for the people that you love and care for and are responsible for, et cetera, you can literally create world peace. I will die on that hill. I will. So think about this. Think about the time that, look at my eye makeup, making a cameo. Think about a time when you have felt wounded by someone that you love, that you felt offended or wounded or disregarded or neglected or whatever the case may be. And you think back, recall back to, maybe you didn't admit this to someone, maybe you didn't verbalize, vocalize, articulate how you were, what you were going through it or whatever, but to yourself. And you know, what was your internal experience, right? If your internal experience was one of fear, of self-doubt, of recalling what you said, what you did, what they said, what they did, and kind of becoming a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Obsessive about it, then you're more likely a fearful, avoidant attachment style. If when you were going through that and you became offended or hurt or feeling neglected, et cetera, you came angry and like insulted almost and wanted to create distance almost instinctively, then you're more than likely a dismissive avoidant. And if you dance kind of like in the middle of those two, where internally you feel anxious, but externally you behave dismissively, that's a fearful avoidant. And then, of course, as I said before, the combination of all of those three is disorganized attachment. When you can recognize how you do that, why you do that, then you can bring yourself back to center and create security within yourself. One of the movies that I always recommend to people, and now they've come out with a sequel, is Inside Out. I believe the first Inside Out came out, I want to say 2015 or something like that. And now here we are 10 years later with a sequel, and Inside Out 2. And they introduce anxiety to the library of emotions. So just the basic premise of the movie is that this little girl is going through a move. Her parents moved to another place. She's left everything that she's ever known, and then the internal emotional world, you know, of that change, of dealing with that. So you have sadness, and you have fear, and you have anger, and joy. And joy is a little bit like the adult in the room, right? And that's her actual character's name. And then later on in the sequel, that little girl has now become a teenager, and now she's got all these other things going on. Now she wants to be approved of. Now she has social cues that she has to listen for, and she's learning how to negotiate, you know, social spaces and so forth. And so here comes another emotion called anxiety and embarrassment and all this other stuff, right? So I'll let you go watch those movies because you can learn a lot about your own internal world of emotions. But I'm bringing that up because it's an opportunity for you to create or to deepen your empathy, not only for yourself, but for other people, because everybody's going through that. And if you can just imagine, just like you have an inner little girl or little boy inside of you, think of the time when you were little. I want to take you back to your earliest childhood memory. Earliest childhood memory. Now I want you to remember that we don't actually start developing cognitive memory until we're about 3 or 4 years old. That's why you can't recall things that happened to you when you were like 6 months old, for example, because you don't have cognitive memory at that point. Your brain hasn't developed to that level. And so when you start getting cognitive memories around 3 or 4 years old, some younger, but it's typically around that age. And so when you have memories of like when you were being two or whatever, it's maybe like a flash of something, but not an actual event. You can't recall. He said, she said, I was here, you were there, I was wearing this. That kind of thing develops a little bit later, right? So I want you to think about your earliest childhood memory of when you felt scared or unloved. Scared or unloved. Like maybe mom's love was at stake or dad's love was at stake, or perhaps you were going to be dropped off somewhere never to be heard of again, something like that, right? How old were you? Was it 3 or 4 or 5? Maybe you were older, whatever the case may be. For me, I was 6. And my sister was 4. And we were playing in the living room with my father's cognac glasses because they were so dainty. And when you tap them together, they made this really pretty sound. And we thought, well, if we just tap them lightly and it makes this pretty sound, what happens if you tap them harder? It'll make a louder sound. So we ended up breaking my father's glasses for his cognac and his brandy and what he used to entertain people when they came over, whatever. And we looked at this crushed glass on the floor, and my sister was like, and she bolted. She was like, I'm not dealing with this. I'm out. And I was sitting there like, crap, I gotta clean this up, right? As I'm cleaning this up, my father walks through the door from work and sees me trying to hide the evidence. And he was like, what did you do? And I was like, what did I do? This was a big effort. So immediately I tried to shift the blame and try to share the blame with my sister, who was nowhere to be found. But that was not going to work because my father was like, you're the oldest, you're supposed to know better, blah, 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 blah. All I saw was, he's taking out the belt. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to die tonight. Oh my God, what have I done? I tried to do the right thing. I tried to clean it up. I tried to get my little sister away so she wouldn't get herself cut. I thought I was being responsible. Give me some credit. And instead, I'm getting a butt whooping. This is not right. I felt like it was so unfair. I felt abandoned by my sister. I felt misunderstood by my dad. It was just the worst ever. And I was like, man, I can't get nothing right, man. It's like you try your best and it's still not good enough. And it's like you just can't win for losing. And that was the feeling that I had, 6 years old, right? And so later on, after um, my father had come down after all of that stuff, he came in the room and explained to me why he did what he did and gave me context and all this other stuff. And that made me feel better. But my butt was still red. Like, we're not over this, art, so I share that story with you to say that it may seem to your adult mind like something like that when you were 4, 5, 6 years old is an insignificant detail. But when you were that age, your world did shatter because mom and dad are everything. And whether they love you or not means whether you get to live or not. Your access to this person that holds your survival at stake, physical, emotional, mental, etc., is a life or death situation. And so I don't want you to dismiss a memory that you have just because you think, oh, cognac glasses, no big deal. Yeah, to you today, because you can go on Amazon and buy a replacement. But to my 6-year-old mind, I was like, oh, today is the day you die. Yeah, because he just took off the belt in front of you, didn't prepare you or nothing. No words, just death. And so the empathy that you get to feel for yourself and for others isn't about the opportunity to be the bigger person necessarily. It's about understanding the emotional weight of that experience, that you're not judging it like good, bad, worse, or indifferent. You're not judging it like a big deal, little deal. It doesn't matter whether it was a big deal or little deal to you, but to the person that experienced it, this could have been an earth-shattering moment. And so the empathy part, that skill is about, I understand where you are. Not I agree, not I would have done the same thing, but I understand where you are. Right? And so when you express anger or pain from a place of empathy, you can call a thing without it being a personalized attack on somebody. Right? You can say, I feel angry, or I feel pain, or I feel neglected, or I feel offended, or I feel I feel this thing because this other thing happened, because you did this, because you said that, because you You know what I mean? I'm not trying to give you a script. I'm trying to for you to understand the placement of the locus of control here. You can acknowledge the trigger. You did this, you said that, this happened, et cetera, et cetera. And I feel this way because of it. I have a feeling of blah, blah, blah because of it. Why is that important? Because when you position it like you made me feel stupid, or you embarrassed me, or you abandoned me, nothing of the sort happened. What happened was that somebody said something or did something or didn't say something or didn't do something. And then it landed on you in a particular way based on your filters and your interpretations. And based on your filters and your interpretations, you decided to jump to a certain conclusion. And you jumped and you broke something. And now you want that other person to help you, to bring you back to wholeness in your own emotional world. Sometimes that other person is available to bring you back to wholeness in your own emotional world, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're available, sometimes they're unwilling. And sometimes they do not have the capacity to do it. And that's okay too. Sometimes you don't have the capacity to do it because you've taken things far too personally, because you have decided to be defensive about certain things, etc. And I am using those words very deliberately, because when we are in an emotional reaction to something, we don't think that we're making choices. You think you're just reacting. You are making choices. The choice to not be awake to your emotional world is a choice. And so I give you what I have used for many, many years, which is pause before responding, pause before receiving. I'm going to say it again. Pause before responding, pause before receiving. You pause before you respond because you want to give yourself that white space, that bridge between what happened and how you're going to interact with it. That's you giving yourself grace for how you're going to respond. You might have to consider some conclusions you've jumped to or assumptions you've made. That's why I always say, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Sometimes our destruction is not in somebody else's behavior, but in our assumptions about it. And so pause so that you can respond in a manner from your choice. And then pause before receiving, because sometimes people say stuff and it's like, that's a you problem. I'm not taking that personally. I'm not carrying that. I'm going to be with you in empathy and we're going to walk through this, but I'm not taking that on, right? And so when you can insert that pause in your response and in your receiving, you're more available to be the leader that you say that you are, to be the mother, the father, the spouse, the friend, the sister, the brother that you say that you want to be or that you are. And eventually, what ends up happening is that you become the person that little 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old would have wanted to advocate for them when they were getting their butt whooped, right? When they were feeling neglected or abandoned or hurt or unloved. You, your own inner 4-year-old. Because ultimately, there's no out there. Even the people that you are in relationship with are really just prisms, P-R-I-S-M, not prison, P-R-I-S-O-N, prisms of your own consciousness, mirrors of your own consciousness. So when you are in relationship with another, you're really in relationship with the part of yourself that they are mirroring back to you. It's like I say to you, you cannot move your head fast enough to see your own ears. You're going to have a mirror in front of you to see your own ears. You can't see them of your own, even though these are the organs that are the closest to your eyes. You still cannot see them yourself. You need a mirror. And so in the same way, there are certain parts of your consciousness, there are certain parts of your emotional world that you cannot see, even though it's very close to your seeing capacity. You need to be in relationship in order to be able to see it, because that's what mirrors are for. So let's hear from you. It's okay if you confess. We're family here. We all love you. And we already know that you have a shadow because we have a shadow. So how do you typically express your anger or your pain? If you're willing to admit here, do not go into details about any misdemeanors or felonies, convicted or otherwise, okay? We cannot be held responsible. We do not have attorney-client privilege. So govern yourself accordingly. Just share. How do you typically express anger or pain? Go ahead. I'm listening. Uh-huh. See? See how you got real quiet? Yeah. Felonious. That's what happened. I'm talking to all the, the people who are talking about leadership and love and light or whatever. The love and light people are the ones that have the darkest shadows. I want you to know that. Don't think I'm blind. Chase, are you raising your hand? Or are you saying hallelujah?
I'm saying hallelujah. Grand rising, everyone. You know, man, Monikah, you always got to go to the depths of the core of the aorta. You know, I was thinking about what you said, and I was in conversation with someone about this multiple months ago about how the person in front of you is a mirror.
Mm-hmm.
And man, the last time I felt that, it was so hard to understand it, not understand it. It was so hard to
admit it.
Yeah, admit it. And the reason why I say that is because we all know where we're coming from as people. We know ourselves. So when something comes in front of you, like you're genuinely trying to help someone, or you're genuinely trying to be there for someone, you're genuinely trying to be of service, genuinely. And the person has a reaction like, what do you think, I'm stupid? Why would you say that to me? Or why are you, I don't need that from you. I'm just, and you know they need something. You're just trying to offer it, in the moment. And then, like you said, you take that couple moments before you respond to certain things. It is better almost every time. I can attest to that. If you don't just shoot those bullets out quickly, you see it differently. I believe that 100%. The thing that gets me sometimes is the people who don't seem to care, the people who don't seem to have the situation or the conversations that you have, when they say, why do you deal with that? Just don't deal with that. You don't have to help that person. You don't have to talk to that person. Forget that. Who cares? I don't deal with stuff like that. When you're genuinely trying to come from a place of compassion, because I believe everyone needs someone to listen to them at some point, or to be there, or to have an empathetic thread that comes towards them where they go, wow, you really do understand me. Wow, cool. I'm glad that you're here for me. I find that I listen to a lot of people. A lot of people come to me and ask me questions about things. I think I get it from my parents because I've watched them as I grew up, as you were talking about your childhood memories. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I took that on as an adult. I saw them do that all the time. Mm. Oh, we're going to go help them. Oh, we're going to pick up such and such. Oh, we're bringing food to these people. Oh, you know what? We're going to do that for them. That's all I heard when I was younger, right? Mm-hmm. So now that I'm an adult, I feel like in some ways there's a criticism behind it now. And when I deal with it, like when I say most recently, like in the last couple of years, I feel like I pause a little bit now. I don't jump to trying to help this person, that person. And when I see a mirror that I don't like, or something that's in front of me, I'm like, wait a minute, that's not me. Is that me? How's that me? That's not how I see myself. I have to pause and look at it deeper for another 20 or 30 seconds and go, where's this coming from? I don't understand. And it's really hard. It's really hard in the moment because you're like, oh gosh, what is this in front of me? How did I manifest this?
So how do you respond to your own anger or your own pain? Do you withdraw? Do you just get helpful?
Generally, I get quiet. I just get like pensive and internal because I want to make sure that I'm making the right decision. I tend to just go away. I read, I walk by the water, I, play an instrument, I write. I have set things that I can do in those moments,
Yeah.
like to get me back to normal again or back to balance, I should say.
Yes. Yes.
And it's just hard. It's hard to have
What's hard?
that it, it's hard to have the intentionality of wanting to show up or be in a certain place for someone and it's not received that way
Why is that hard?
because I want that person to flourish. I want that person to be helped and not helped or supported or whatever the case may be. I'm better at it now because I don't get involved with things as much as I used to before. But I'm just concentrating on the thing that you said about when you see yourself or a friend or a partner is showing you a part of yourself.
Yeah.
Whew, that's very tricky at times. Very, very tricky.
Well, can I just translate what you just said into mastery language?
Mastery language. Welcome. Go
What
ahead.
I just heard you say is when I was little, when I was a boy, the way that I got love and validation was by being useful and helpful and moving somebody along and sharing myself or sharing my lessons with someone in need is a way that I can create intimacy by way of superiority.
Very interesting take, Dr. Monikah Ogando. And I can appreciate what you're saying. I really can. I guess my big statement is after hearing you say it that way, um, I don't think there's anything wrong at all with showing up in the world, hoping that you are serving people and being of
Of course
service to
not.
other people.
No, no, no.
So
Don't hear that
because
in what I'm saying.
and I wasn't taking that as a criticism, but I'm saying I seem to run into situations where that is criticized, and that's what gets under my skin sometimes because I'm not changing that.
Right. Right, right, right,
Just,
right.
that's all I'm saying. But
Right.
I like what you said, and I think that there's a large percentage of truth to how you gave me the language of mastery atop it. It was nice.
Well, so here's another thing that I have learned, and you probably have discovered this for yourself as well, which is that when you hold people in their power, in their authorship, sometimes that can be very confrontive to people because they don't hold themselves to power,
Correct.
right?
Exactly.
And so when you ask, you and I have had this conversation offline. When
Yep.
you ask someone, uh, so I hear this differently. Would you like to hear what I have to say about it? It assumes that you have free will, that you have volition, that you have choice. It's like you might not want to hear what I have to say about it.
You
You might
might
just
not.
want to hear,
It's
listen, and
true.
that's
It's
okay.
true.
I'm
It's
available
true.
for that.
It's
And
true.
I'm not gonna get offended if you don't want to hear my opinion, right? Because
Right.
you're in your power and your right to be able to say that or do that. And sometimes people, I have experienced this as well as you have, where it's like somebody might want to be like, why don't you just tell me what to do? I'm not gonna do that
Yeah.
because because you're not my child, number one, and number two, because you are still in your power.
That's right.
And even if I quote unquote tell you what to do, you still have the choice to be able to say, no, I'm not gonna do that, or I don't want to, or this feels hard, or whatever the case may be. And so when you respect the person's authorship, um, maybe you create permission for them to step into their authorship on their own. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
You are you're very good, Monikah. You're very good. You make me think in a very, very specific way. I appreciate you so much.
So I'm gonna say this to everybody because we're 2 minutes past the hour, past our time. Observe yourself. I'm gonna give you a little homework. Observe yourself in the moments when your anger or your pain body or your feeling of neglect or sadness or whatever is wounded or triggered. Observe where you go. Do you go to fix it? Do you go to withdrawal, retreating, like our friend Chase mentioned? Do you go to tit for tatting? Like, where do you go? And not that you have to go there, just observe where you go internally before any behavior. And then go down that rabbit hole a little bit. Like, where did you learn that? Who did that in front of you, or who did that for you or to you? Because if you can go down that rabbit hole for yourself, then you will have much more deep respect and patience for other people's internal emotional world and let them have whatever experience they're having. You could really just witness somebody's experience without having to involve yourself into solving it. Because here's what I'm going to assert. When we are interested in solving somebody else's experience, it is not for them. It is to be in integrity with your identity of yourself as a helper, as a problem solver, as a dependable friend, or whatever the case may be. All you are doing is gathering evidence of the identity that you've decided to attain for yourself, right? And so the assistance to somebody else depends on consent, on their willingness to accept that assistance. Otherwise, it's not help. You're just using their problem as a mechanism for your self-edification. So with that said, laugh today, love generously today, eat more plant-based foods today. You don't have to do it every day. You don't have to do it forever. Just today. Get yourself at least 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Get yourself some giving opportunities. Give of your time, your energy, your attention, your patience. And move your body. Remember that twerking is a spiritual practice, raising your kundalini. Stress less, and of course, audit your assumptions. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. Audit your assumptions. We love you. See you next time.
Listen.